Howdy again, it's tubalcain, and this time with Machine Shop Tips number 288 entitled Cutting a Woodruff Keyseat Using the Logan Lathe. Now in the past videos I've shown you how to do this on the Atlas lathe, and I have shown you in the last video how to set up the milling attachment on the Logan lathe, and that's the Palmgren milling attachment that I'm going to use. And I'm going to cut a Woodruff Keyseat in 5/8 shaft, and this is a Woodruff key, so that it'll fit this pulley. And remember now that this is a key, this is the key seat, and this is the keyway. And sometimes I misuse the word in the video, I know I do, but that's the correct terminology, and that's to be done with Woodruff key seat cutter like this, and this particular one is 3/4 in diameter and 3/16 thick, and I'm going to use this key with the arrow, that size key. So that being said, let's get started. Now make sure you have a copy of Machinery's Handbook, because all of the information you need regarding the depth and so on is in the handbook, or other handbooks, but or you might find it on the internet, but you do need to have that information. In other words, we have to know how deep to cut the key seat, and that's going to vary with the diameter of the shaft. In this case it's 5/8. And what I've done, looking it up in the charts, found out that the depth of the key seat is going to be 214 thousandths, and then I have to add the chordal depth of 14 thousandths to give myself a depth of 228, and I can round it really to 229, but I'll probably make it 230. It's better to have just a thousandth or two extra on there so that it fits. And remember what the chordal depth is, and I'm not going to spend time talking about this, and this is difficult to understand, and pay no attention to that, but that is the distance shown by the arrows there from the top of the shaft to a flat spot that is equal to the width of the key. Is that clear as mud? A Woodruff key or key cutter here is often called half moon, but the correct name is Woodruff key or key seat. Now we have to find the exact center of the shaft in order to cut the key seat, and this shaft is again 625 thousandths. So in order to come over to the center, and I've shown this in other videos, we're going to touch the work, then we're going to raise the cutter and move it in the radius of the shaft and half of the thickness of the cutter. And in this case, that happens to be half, or the radius of the shaft is 312.5, and half the thickness of the cutter is 0.0938. Add them together and we got 0.406 after we touch off, and then we move it in that far. Alright, let's go on over to the Logan lathe. I'm at the Logan lathe, and as I discussed in earlier videos, you absolutely cannot hold your cutter in a 3-jaw chuck or a drill chuck. It has to be held either in a collet or in a end mill type holder, and these come in different sizes. However, these are limited to the because of the need to tighten this set screw against a flat on the cutter, and most of these Woodruff cutters do not have a flat on them, but otherwise they're going to spin. So I'm using a 1/2 inch, in this case it's a AT size collet in the Logan lathe, and I'm protecting the thread. Got to line up the key. Oh, that was tricky. And we don't allow any more than necessary to hang out, because the weak spot is the neck right here, and it can break off. And you'll have vibration and chatter. So I'll put it in back gears. to lock the spindle. Tighten it. And that part of the job is done, and select your speed. And in this case I'm about in the middle position on the flat belts, which will be just fine for this size of shaft. The milling attachment is already set up as shown in the last video, so it's square with the face of the spindle, or I should say of the drive plate. I've done that before. It's tightened down. The compound is set at 90 degrees because I'm going to do some of the feeding with this when I find the center, and I'll be then of course locking the carriage once I get it ready to cut. Now as far as holding the work, and I've marked the approximate position where I want to put the key seat, there is a bit of a V-way in the Palmgren vice jaws, as you can see. They're not very deep V's, but I am going to use them. But an alternative is to use this type of V-block in there to hold the work. Keep it from rolling and making sure that it's in there square and not cockeyed or crooked. Remember that on a lathe, this is the x-axis, and I've already located the cutter such that I'll be cutting the key seat within my layout marks right there. And then because of vibration and all of that on the lathe, I'm going to lock the cross slide, and I'm going to do that since there is no provision for that. I'm going to just tighten up one of the gib screws and arbitrarily choosing one in the middle, and that'll keep it just from walking, or the possibility of that happening. So I do recommend that. Next I will set the z-axis, and remember on a lathe this is the z-axis, the longitudinal direction. And I'm coming up and just barely touching the work, and you can use a piece of paper and there are a feeler gauge, but I think that this is accurate enough, so I just have touched the work, and now I am locking the carriage, and that will not be moved until the job is done. Then I need to lower the work so it clears the cutter, and I'm going to move over. I'm going to feed again in the Z direction with the compound. Now that can also be done with a dial indicator as shown in one of the other videos, so you can choose your own weapon on that. Now I have again locked the carriage. I've zeroed out the compound, and remember that I need to move over 406 thousandths. So with this zeroed out, and I know I'm going to clear the cutter, so I'm not going to break the cutter off, I'm going to move in 100, 200, 300, 400. These graduations are so small. 6 thousandths. And now I am on the center of the work. The very last thing to do now is to touch off, and I put some blue tape on there, but you can also use a piece of paper on there. But the idea now is we want to touch the work so we know that we're again on the edge of the work with the cutter. So I'm very close now, and I'm just going to slowly feed with the Palmgren here until I tear the tape. And you'll see the tape lift up just a little bit. Can you see that? Now I can take the tape off, and I'm actually ready to cut finally. All my feeding will be in the y-axis with the Palmgren using this knurled knob, and I do not like the little collar here. It's very hard to read. It's in the shadows and you cannot zero it out. So I put a black mark on there, and I have my little chart here that I'm going to move it 228 thousandths. I'm going to call it 230, and when I'm at 230 I'll be at the right depth. Now I'm ready to cut. This is mild steel, 1018, but it is not screw machine stock, so it's not going to cut particularly easy, but here we go. And use some oil. That's 100,000. It is a nice sharp cutter, I'll give you that. No chatter and vibration. And this is never as good as a Bridgeport. When I feel the chatter, I ease up on my feeding. And there it is, the final depth. And there it is, I've got a good fit. Now, if at all possible, try your pulley or sprocket or whatever you have on before you take the work out of the vise. And this one, of course, is way too large to fit in there, and I did have a smaller one, luckily. But I've got a nice fit. And I did blow it out, and I had just a little deburring to do, not too much. But that's what it looks like. Let's take it over to the bench and get a closer look. There it is, the finished key seat, along with the key. It's a good fit. There's the original pulley that I was working on. And of course the set screw would bind down against the key. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's how to cut a Woodruff key seat on the Logan lathe. Be sure and watch the next video where I'm going to show you how to make a straight key seat in a shaft. Same setup, only straight. And you may be interested in that as well. This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and be sure and watch my 600 other videos. And I'll see you in the next video.